Hello and welcome back to another video! Today we'll be finally painting this absolutely beautiful resin Arabian. She's called Wicked Furious and is sculpted by the amazing Morgan Kilburn. As usual, I prepped her off camera with some sandpaper and epoxy. She was a pretty nice cast and I didn't have to do too much to it. Unfortunately though, I noticed her ear had at some point been broken and resculpted, which hadn't been disclosed to me when I bought it, so that wasn't great. It seems to be a common problem with this mold, since the ear does stick out quite a ways, and can fall in that direction. But I decided it was a decent enough repair job and decided to just carry on and primer anyway. Well, I was anyway, but then the universe said, nah, you better just redo it. I set her to dry and sure enough she fell over and the ear popped right off. I guess you could say it was pretty irritating. Don't click away, I'll stop. So I will have to fix it after all, but this way it will be a lot stronger, and I'd rather have it happen before painting than after. So the first thing to do is make sure this won't happen a third time if she does fall again. So I would be adding wire supports. Now this part is pretty tricky. I have to use a tiny Bildrit and then make a hole I can glue the wire into. So very carefully I make sure to not accidentally go through the sides of the ear. This isn't totally necessary, especially if you have a horse that isn't going to fall right on its ear, but it does help make a base to sculpt on as well. You could also just use one wire in the middle of the ear, especially if it's a smaller scale. Next, I cut my wire, fold it in half, and use the other ear to measure the length. Then I cut it down to size with some wire cutters and glue it in with my E6000 glue. I let that dry for a day and then I can shape it. To help my epoxy stick, I tie a thin wire around to fill the shape out. Now I can add my Aves epoxy. I'm just getting the general shape first. Of course I look at a lot of ear references as well as the remaining ear. I smooth it with some 70% rubbing alcohol before adding any details. I just keep going over it with my tools until it's looking right. I even add in the little hairs inside. I sanded it a little bit and re-primed, and now we can start the fun part, the paint job. To no one's surprise, I want to make her a Sabino. I found a really beautiful Arabian horse called Lacey, who was a W19 Sabino, so she was my main reference. But before the crazy pattern, let's get that base coat on. I want to do a dark bay base. As you can see, I got my fancy little spray booth now, so I don't have to wait for good weather to airbrush. I still make sure to wear a respirator and turn on the bathroom fan. Yes, this is just in my bathroom permanently. I tried out a different kind of airbrush paint for this, but honestly it was kind of hard to work with, and I'll just be going back to Model Air, even though it's more expensive. Once I have a good solid layer of brown, I can add a darker shade for shadows. I make sure to follow all the sculptural details. Once that dried, I sealed it with my matte spray off camera. And now we can start mapping out that pattern. I'm using my Prismacolored pencils. I use some cool toned grays as transition shades. I feel like it makes it pop a little bit more against the brown. I blend the shades together and smooth out that rough colored pencil texture with a blending stump. I blend in the same direction as I've been drawing on all the hairs. I look at a lot of different horses to see the hair direction. Appaloosas are especially helpful. I go on the inside of the spot with white to further the transition. I don't fill them all the way since I will be going over it with paint anyway. Now I can just kick back and put on some TV and slowly fill it all out, going back and forth between the shades and slowly building it up. I do hit it with some matte spray every now and then to make sure it doesn't come off and to help build the color up. Alright, now it's time to make this less crazy looking and add the white paint. I'm using Golden Brand acrylic that I thinned down to make it smooth. I fill the big areas with this bigger brush before I can go in and add the details. With that dry, go back in and do more colored pencils now that I can see how everything looks. Of course, by thinning the paint, it means I will need to add infinite layers of white, but I won't subject you to that. Instead, we can move right on to the eyes. I already painted them white first, so I will be painting in the black. I work my way out until it's big enough. For the brown, I paint a dark ring. While that's still wet, I can add lighter dots to the bottom, and then some gold for a little bit of sparkle. Then I do the same for the other side. Lastly, I add the tiniest little eye shine with white. I did already seal her a bunch with matte spray to cut all the shine that white acrylic paint has, so this blush will stick beautifully. I use eyeshadow to pink the skin. I also dirty the legs just a little bit to add some realism. I seal and do 2 layers. I also shade the mane and tail with black pan pastel to add a little detail. For the hooves, I add a beige base. The one hoof will have some black, so I blend it out. I add some white to the tops. I will also be painting the sculpted insides of the hooves. I dry brush some white on. I also did the same with another shade of tan. sides of the hooves, I pull up a picture and try and follow it as best as possible. Since I will be making her satin and don't need to spray any more matte, I can gloss her hooves and eyes. This will make sure nothing happens to them while I'm still working. Next, I can add the pale pink flesh color to the inside of the mouth. I will shade it with a darker version once that dries. I yellow the teeth a little bit and shade where they touch each other. Lastly, I add the chestnuts with a few layers of my gray paint pen. I seal her with some Testors spray lacquer, and now we're all done! Time for the final result! Here's the before. And here's the after. I'm so glad I got to give this girl a coat. This mold is so pretty and fun to paint, even with the setbacks. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something. Make sure to boop that like button and subscribe for more projects.